Like many Magic players, I like foils. I admit it, I like my shiny cardboard. And also like many Magic players who started playing in the ancient times, I generally prefer old border foils over everything else. Now, nostalgia is obviously playing a role here. These were the first cards I was introduced to as a little kid, and it's impossible for me to look at these cards without the shade of my rose-colored glasses. But nostalgia alone doesn't fully explain my foil preferences, because most of my favorite foils aren't old border at all. This modern border Ghostly Prison is easily in my top 5 favorites. I just love how the foiling complements the art here, giving this prison this otherworldly glow. It really reinforces the feel of this being a ghostly prison. Others include Pure Steel Paladin. The foiling is the sunlight piercing the clouds and reflecting off the knight's armor, and gosh do I love the foil watermarks. Also, I love the halos around these fellows' heads as they're being brain sucked or something. Really weird and really gorgeous. And by looking through my collection of foils, I started to realize what my foil preferences actually are. And one big takeaway is that, for me, contrast is key. Most of my favorite foils are ones where the foiling is being used sparingly to highlight specific parts of the card. A lot of the foils that I don't care for make the entire card way too shiny, and when that happens, my brain kind of tunes it all out. It's like if everything on the card is shiny, then nothing is shiny at all. Nothing stands out to me. I think that's a big reason why I prefer old border foils. The shiny parts are always confined to just the borders, which always makes them pop out to me. The shiny frames just feel so much more shiny to me when in stark contrast to the rest of the card, which is flat. Since all old border foils foil the same format, I simply like them all. It's impossible for me not to. And by the way, when I mean old border foils, I'm referring specifically to cards printed before 8th edition. The newer retro frame cards have been hit or miss for me. Some look awful and I don't use them, but some, like these Elaines, almost look as good as the old ones. Or this retro arcane signet compared to the old border Milliket. Though they do have curling issues, which I'm aware is due to humidity levels, but for some reason my old foils stay perfectly flat even when I'm traveling with them to extremely dry and humid areas, so I don't know if that's everything. But modern foils have the potential to be even more exciting to me, because instead of enhancing the border, they can highlight and enhance specific parts of the art. I love how the foiling is being used to make Liliana's purple magic pop, or how it's used exclusively on the Sphere of Resistance in the artwork here to not just make it feel more magical, but also emphasize what the artwork is actually focused on. One of my favorite islands is this one from Alara. There's a lot of shiny bits here, but the dark regions from the night sky is a perfect contrast to it all, really allowing those clouds and the ocean to pop. I'm a big fan of the Dragons of Tarkir Shokus frames for similar reasons. I love how much of the card is devoted to this flat black, which really lets the shiny parts, even the text, pop in a way that it normally can't. And this is why I like my foil Inditha Triumph way more than the rest of the cycle. I love that large chunks of the card are dark and not shiny, which makes the shiny bits, like the crystals, pop out even more. Meanwhile, my full Rogren Triumph has beautiful art that I absolutely love, but it's much brighter and shinier all over, so nothing really stands out to me. And no, the artwork doesn't have to dictate how shiny the foil version has to be. Just because the art on Rogren Triumph is super light and colorful doesn't mean the entire thing has to be super shiny. My favorite card of all time is Spellstutter Sprite, specifically the original printing, and the foil version of this is phenomenal. Whoever was in charge of the foiling process decided to just make the background sky behind the main figure shiny, as well as the jewelry on the figure's staff and clothing. But they could have just as easily made everything shiny. They could have made the cloud shiny as well, but they chose not to, and I think that was an amazing choice. And speaking of art, that definitely plays a part in how much I like the foil too. I absolutely love the art on this Mana Confluence, so I picked up a foil version. Though honestly, I would have much preferred it if they flipped where the shiny parts are here, so that the colorful figures were shiny and the stuff around them wasn't. And unfortunately, now I'm gonna have to think about that every single time I see this beautiful card. So here's where I was initially going to end the video, with the takeaway being that I prefer when the shiny parts of foils are used sparingly to highlight key parts of the card, card and not just be a huge shiny blob covering the entire card itself. I generally prefer old border foils because they always do this, and also a bit because of nostalgia, but my favorite foils are actually newer ones that use foils to highlight key parts of the artwork instead. But then I looked through a lot more of my favorite foil cards and realized this Toshiro is in my top 5 favorites as well, and it's ridiculously shiny. In fact, the only thing that isn't shiny here is Toshiro himself and his victims. And then another one of my favorite foils is this extremely shiny blue card where the merfolk in the foreground is the only thing that isn't obscenely shiny. Or this gorgeous John Avon Mountain that is so very shiny and so very red. I love all of these so much, and yet they don't fit my first criteria at all. So what's up? Okay, second big takeaway here. I am a hypocrite. Alright, not exactly, but it goes to show that taste is complicated. I do like it when foils are used sparingly to highlight small parts of the card. But what I'm realizing now while making this video is that I also love foils that make relatively simple colored backgrounds super shiny and vibrant. And if the card depicts a main focus, like if it's depicting a creature for example, that main focus is flat in contrast in the foreground. I've mentioned Toshiro and the Marrow already, but I also love the Final Fantasy showcase frames for this reason. I love that simple shiny colored background sharply contrasted to the flat character and Roman numerals. And you betcha I absolutely adore these Cauldron foils for the same reason. The background is this gorgeous shiny fire, while the equipment in the foreground are flat in contrast. Also in Helm of Cauldron, you can see this purpley glow in the visor. Ooh, chef's kiss. But the background being relatively simple is key for me. There's a lot of foils that have really shiny, vibrant backgrounds, and then the foreground has a flat character, but the background is so busy, it's a complicated landscape or something, that I sort of lose interest in the piece. So I guess the third takeaway is, shiny parts shouldn't be too busy? Yeah, I'll go with that. But yeah, that's a quick look at my favorite foils in my collection and why I like them. I wanted to do a quick lighthearted video while working on longer video essays that take a lot more time to produce. Plus, it was an excuse for me to look at my shiny cardboard and call it work, so that's a win-win for me. But before we end things, a quick shout out to some of the other types of foils in my collection. Etched foils are very hit or miss for me. It really depends on the specific card if I like it or not, but I absolutely love Gale in etched foil. And I really appreciate that all of them remain flat no matter what. I'm generally not a fan of Surge foils. They look too busy to me and rarely highlight aspects of the art, but I do love the Surge foil transpose, and I don't know why. I think Phyrexian mana foils are cool from a lore perspective, but they look kinda goofy to me. This Tekkathol art though was absolutely made for foil, one of my favorite cards. I actually really like the concept of Strixhaven's etched foils being used as borders, and I really like all of the English versions of it, and I love the Japanese ones. The art of them are so sick, but the borders on the Japanese Strixhaven etched foils are nearly impossible to see. Literally, it's so hard to see it unless you actually are actively looking for it. I really wish the foiled border was more noticeable. And finally, la creme de la creme, the Aetherdrift Piss foils are so hideous that they become beautiful in their own way. I unironically love them. That's all I got for now. Let me know your favorite types of foils in the comments section below. And until next time, friends, see ya!